hope you all are doing very well, and I hope that you haven't been enjoying our story so far. So last week, we learned about how God sent the plagues to Egypt so that he could free his people, and that he could convince Pharaoh to let his people go. And what happens? Pharaoh lets the Israelites go, and they begin to make their way to the land that God was giving them. All right, so are you guys ready for the next part of our story? All right, here we go. Okay. God led the people out of Egypt by a pillar of cloud in the daytime. At night, he led them in a pillar of fire. He led them to the edge of a sea. And at that sea they stood, watching. Now the king of Egypt came, and he sent his army after the Israelites. God's people were scared. The army was chasing them, but they could not get away from them because the sea was in front of them. Moses said, "Do not be afraid. God will take care of us." And God did take care of them. That night, God sent a strong wind to push the sea back. Then God's people could walk across the seabed on both sides, and the sea was pushed back, and they walked across on dry lands. The army tried to follow them. They tried to cross the sea too, but God made the water pour back over the seabed. The sea covered the whole army. God has saved his people. They all sang a song of thanksgiving to God and praised him for their miraculous salvation. God's people began to travel a long way. They walked this way, they walked that way. They began to complain. They said they did not have enough food. So, God sent food to them. That evening at dinner time, quail came for them to catch and eat. And every breakfast time, they found sweet bread on the ground. They called this bread, do you know the name? Manna, that's right. They called the bread manna. The Israelites kept traveling. They traveled this way, they traveled that way. Everywhere they went, God gave them manna. One day, the Israelites camped near a mountain. God wanted to talk to Moses up on the mountain. He called Moses up to the mountain. Moses! The mountain shook. A thick cloud came in, and it covered the mountain. There was thunder. There was lightning. God had come to the mountain in a cloud. Moses went up to the mountain. He walked all the way to the top, and he talked with God. God told Moses the rules he wanted his people to follow. God said to him, "Do not kill. Do not steal. Respect your father and mother." He gave them many other rules. God also told Moses to build a house of worship. The people built it just the way God had told them. They called the house the tabernacle. The cloud that led them covered the tabernacle. When the cloud moved, they followed. They took the tabernacle with them. And when the cloud stopped, the people stopped. And so God led the Israelites through the wilderness for many, many years. And that, my friends, is where we will stop the story for today. See y'all later. The story of the Israelites is an incredible adventure. We see the great love of God and that he creates a plan to free his people from slavery. We see God's awesome power in the plagues we learned about last week and the parting of the Red Sea that we saw in this week's story. We see in the story that God doesn't mess around with his promises, but what he begins, he is faithful to finish. We see in the life of Moses what friendship with God looks like and what could happen when we say yes to an adventure with God. God is our ever faithful and loyal Father. He will never leave us to walk alone. At the end of our story this week, we learned about the 10 Commandments. These were rules that were given to the Israelites by God to help keep them safe. Rules about how to treat each other well, and rules that would keep them close to God so that he could protect them. Later in the New Testament, so a long, long way into the future, Jesus, God's Son, says that all of these laws are meant to help us to do two things: to love the Lord our God with all of our hearts, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So which of these laws help us to love God, and which of these laws help us to love our neighbor? To think about this, I have a game for you to play with your family. So grab your parents, your grandparents, your siblings, and teach them how to play this game. If you've ever played a memory game, then you might recognize how this one works. So first, what you're going to do is you're going to get 10 cards. So this could be index cards, Post-it notes. I used a Post-it note, whatever you want to do. So grab those 10 cards, and on each of the 10 cards, you're going to write one commandment. So one commandment per one card. For example, I have on my card, have no other gods before me, which is the first commandment. So one commandment per one card. So do this for 10 cards, 10 commandments. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to get 10 new cards. So now you have 20. And on the 10 new cards, you're going to draw pictures that show the commandment in action. So my commandment, have no other gods before me. I now drew a picture of me handing my heart to God. All right? So I have 2 that show the same thing, one as a written, one as a picture. Okay, so now you have 20 cards, 10 pictures, and 10 written commandments. All right. Now you're going to go ahead and put all of these cards face down on a flat surface in front of you. So all of the pictures and words should be face down. All right. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take turns flipping 2 cards over so that they're face up. And if you have a match, you get to keep the cards. A match is when you drew the drawing and its matching commandment, or the commandment and its matching drawing. So if I got these 2, it's a match, I get to keep it. All right? If these don't match, then I put them back down, face down, and it's the next person's turn. And you keep going until all of the cards are drawn. All right? Sounds good. Okay, so what happens if you get a match? If you get a match, you get to keep it. But also, now I want you to talk about with your family, what does this law help us do? Does it help us to love people? Does it help us to love God? Or does it help us to do both? And I also want you to think about what would happen if we didn't follow this law. How would it stop us from loving God? Or how would it stop us from loving other people? Okay, so with each match that you get, I want you to ask these questions together. All right, friends, well, that's all I have for you today. I hope you all are doing so well, and I look forward to the day that we get to be together. I miss you all, and I love you much. Bye.